welcome back. Today we are going to sift through the UMV tier. However, before doing any of that, we have to fix our power production. While it looks like we are doing fine, we are actually not. Our wireless network is indeed empty. So empty that our plasma mixer can't work. It just received 10 minutes of stocked up power, but it is draining it in no time. So we shall build a second Dyson sphere. Since it won't be the last one and each one requires many different parts, we shall make a custom A2 pattern to prepare all of its components with a single click. And there we have the total cost of each of those structures. Once the structure is built, we can go back to our base and remember that we can also turn on our backup generators to get an extra kick. Sadly, we didn't hit the 1 trillion production milestone. Fear not. That was the end of the fuels, but there is still more room in the future. And, with the future of fuels, we can almost double the milestone. Now that we have some more energy to work with, we can start our new quests. After quickly completing the usual components, we will probably want to get a component assembly line upgrade to reduce the space-time and hypergen costs. However, it looks like hard metals is not the thing we lack of. We are short on the polymer made by exotic bacteria. To skip the whole chemistry we would need a tier 4 QFT, which however costs too many UMV components. So we go back to our clean room where we mutate more bacteria that we then place in some new vats. Meanwhile, we can produce a couple of high-tier materials. We add one more step to our circuitry, and we get the last of the UMV components. Then we make the new superconductors for the new energy hatch, which we can now make wireless. And, to get this one, we had to craft all the previous wireless ones. So, let's stop for a moment and go all the way back. To start off, we needed the new superconductor, which this time contains dragon blood and space-time. To make it superconducting, we can no longer use helium. Space-time is mandatory. But with that we only got the normal UMV energy hatch. To make it wireless, other than a bunch of expensive stuff, we need to do some research. Which was recursive. All the way down to a ULV wireless energy hatch. But, while we have UMV energy hatches, we don't have any ULV one. Once we get it, we have to research and craft all of the other tiers back up to UMV. And since our data bank has limited slots and we are too lazy to make a second one, we started stocking all of the useless stuff in a chest. Which is now almost full. Then, without any recursive research, we also acquired the most powerful wireless hatch we can make so far, UMV 64 amps. This one is as powerful as a 16,000 UV laser hatch, but wireless. And its first use shall be to speed up our circuit production. So that we can make more than one UXV circuit every minute instead of one every 15 minutes. Meanwhile, we also managed to upgrade our component assembly line. The next quest isn't really a quest but a warning. We could simply mark it as complete and move on, but I think we should upgrade our base instead. Indeed, as of now, we are still having trouble crafting just a couple of Dyson spheres. That's not good at all. The first thing we will want to fix is the redox polymer production. And our main objective is to produce it with a QFT. But that requires tier 4 casings, and we have trouble even with crafting the tier 3. So we have to increase the size of our old redox setups. Luckily, thanks to the Loki ring, we can build many machines at the same time. And now we just have to wait a little bit for some redox to stock up. One other thing required for the tier 4 QFT is black body naquadria supersolid, which is made while working naquadria. This process outputs some inert naquadria dusts, which may not look huge in amount, but we can expand those into thousands of ingots with a neutron activator. The only cost on conversion is a bit of plasma and time. We can shrink the time required by increasing the height of our neutron activators. And thus we shall make those pierce the sky. And that was the tier 3 QFT. For the tier 4, we need more redox polymer. While it stocks up, we can work on gathering the other materials we are short on. Our old space elevator couldn't stock up enough fluids, so we upgraded its motors and its pumps. While that easily took care of the missing fluids, it won't help with the missing minerals. Some ores can't be obtained by space mining. So we have to go back to void miners. But we want to place those in a more special place. The one chosen by the true edgelords like us. To get there, we have to start by compressing a lot of cobblestone. So much that we had to upgrade our implosion compressor to space-time and 8 billion EU to get it in a reasonable amount of time. Then we cover that cobblestone in cheese, which will act as glue for the other components. Finally, we use magic to stick some singularities to that agglomerate. With that, we can now travel to the promised land where void miners will be able to gather any ore that is shown on any eye. So, we quickly get a link to the ore processing AE2 subnetwork and start drilling all of those materials. Meanwhile, we have managed to complete our Tier 4 QFT, which is now making huge amounts of redox polymer. Now that redox polymer is no longer an issue, we can finally start crafting our little project of 10 Dyson spheres. However, our current base can't handle that puny task. We must do some upgrades. The first thing we want to enchant is our blast furnaces. For some materials, they can barely cook 4 ingots each second and the backlog is really huge. So, after going inside and do an inspection, we decide that the best action to take is to add some glitter to the heating coils. And then we also increase the power feed. Now it works 8 times faster. The next thing we have to speed up is our fusion reactors. The Mark III were slow to begin with, and the Mark IV are busy trying to make metastable organism. So we are going to craft the fusion reactor. You can already tell this is going to be way more powerful from all of its colors. And indeed it's as good as 10 of the previous tier. Also, for quick recipes, we can manually set the parallel counter, thus making it 100 times faster than the Mark III. Next, with a thermosync radiator, we can make our PCB factory 2000 times faster. Then, to speed up our nanoforge, we made more of those buildings, while also increasing the working power. Finally, to help our DTPFs, we added 4 more blocks. But, all of that caused a huge increase in power consumption. To help our backup generators, we increased the working efficiency by adding 2 fluids that we can obtain by tearing apart some space-time using a tesseract and a quantum anomaly on an anvil. And that boost was enough to let us complete the last plasma mixer recipes, thus completing the new generators just in time before we run out of fuel. The old Dyson spheres took quite some space, so let's try to make the new setup more compact. We figured out we can wall share a bunch of parts. The most important being the computation input, which we are now going to make wireless, thus connecting to the cloud. So that we can keep our computers in our 2B data center located in our main base. With that set up, we are now producing more power, but it's still just enough for our update base. So, it's clear that we are going to need more. However, there is one main issue: we are too slow at producing the spinny ingots. Our EBFs indeed can't even make 2 per second and we need millions. In hope to find a solution, we shall go ask help to some random villagers who seem to be worshipping some random deities. And it looks like our prayers got answered. All we have to do is build a forge in honor of the gods. We shall make it bigger and more complex than any other multi-block we built so far. To craft it, we are going to search unfindable particles, work weird glitzy materials, and synthesize weird stuff. Once all the collection part is done, we proceed into clogging all of our whole base to craft huge amount of all kind of things, which made us quickly cook huge amounts of old materials, and slowly chug through harder to work ones that required a Dyson sphere worth of power to be processed. But, given enough time, we managed to process all of that stuff and complete our new forge. And that thing isn't big just on the outside. It is also a big inside. The first thing we shall read is the nice introduction that will explain us how that machine works. But the thing we care about the most is the path to the celestial transcendence. This will help us upgrade our forge. Furthermore, we have to start from the start if we want it to even be usable. to do this upgrade we are going to need some additional materials, which we quickly gather and send to complete the first upgrade. With that done, we can now add our first module, the Helio Flare Power Forge. This module is going to work exactly like a blast furnace or a volcano. And now that everything is built, it is time to turn it on. To do so, we make some star fuel and give it to our forge. Then we will be supplying transcendent residue to keep it running. And thus we can now admire our forge spinning. But it's still not at the peak of its glory. Indeed, we can make the star on the inside more bright and colorful. And I think we can now take 1 good minute to admire our new machinery. And it turns out that this is not even its final form. But getting the evolution is going to be a more complex thing, so let's start by using the module we have. And we find out that this is already as good as our 8 blast furnaces together. And, while that module works, we are actually increasing the progress of our forge milestones. Those are goals that, once reached, will reward us with graviton shards which can be used for more upgrades. After getting all of the basic improvements, we are faced with the first important one. This one will also require some extra materials, one of which being lossless photon transfer medium. And, long story short, we are going to need to reach a temperature above anything a normal blast furnace could ever reach, 17,000 Kelvin. And even our Helio Flare struggles with that at the moment. But we can increase the fuel burn rate of our forge to reach higher temperatures. Now that we can craft those materials, we run into another issue: we don't have enough copper. But we can just pump more with the space elevator. Most of that copper is used in the production of 6-phased copper nanites. Now, while that part of the needed material takes a lot of copper, there is one other thing that instead takes a lot of time: transcendent metal nanites. So we can use that time to build more nanoforges. And, with that, we have unlocked the helioflux melting core. This module will melt dust straight into liquid, skipping the need for a vacuum freezer and a fluid extractor. With those 2 modules, our old blast furnaces can now go into retirement. That will drop a lot of blocks, and also destroy our unbreakable tools, which we can easily craft again. Anyways, the next upgrade we can do is the gravitational plasma containment inductor, which will unlock the heliothermal plasma fabricator. That thing will turn anything into plasma. Now, that thing is not really worth it for most of the plasma we use, but it can be a great help for some that do require some scarce materials or have low yields in the fusion reactor. It will also be the only way to obtain some peculiar plasma required later on. Finally, we unlock the heliofusion exercitizer, but that is going to be used only in the next tier. And now we are stuck at the split. Here we can choose only one of the 3 paths. While we decide which path to take, we can make the last QFTs, which will remove a lot of production chains. That will allow us to do a lot of cleanup and refactoring of our whole base, so that we will no longer have cable messes lying around. Finally, we add a bunch more of Dyson spheres to increase our power production. And, with that, I think we are finally ready to conclude this episode. So, what's the lesson today? If you want to stare at the sun, sunglasses are not enough. You need some specialized equipment, possibly a welding helmet. Bye bye.